Welcome to the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I'm your host, Rashawn Stevenson. This is a show where I deconstruct experiences and how they help us develop into the best version of ourselves. I'll be facilitating conversations discussing the frameworks and experiences that help shape our lives. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I just wanted to take a little bit of time out to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for all the support and the encouragement. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed, it helps the show get exposure and found by different people. I also wanted to share a piece of feedback that I got from a good friend of mine, and he said, "Only winners commit to the process. It's about process and progress, not perfection." All of the feedback that I got was valuable. That one hit the most because it was something that I reflected on a lot in terms of making sure that I committed to the process of getting better and making sure that, I always did a show that had some type of impact. So thank you. Which leads me to my guest. Today's conversation is with a good friend. His name is Carrington Dennis. It's essentially about process and progress. Carrington is a technical startup founder and has worked as an engineer consultant in the technology sector for the last 9 years. This is a very wide-ranging conversation. We talk about everything from how he got involved in doing improv, comedy, acting, and currently learning Mandarin. So enjoy this conversation with my guest, Carrington Dennis. I don't even know where to start with this one. This is one that back in the day when I knew I wanted to do a podcast, I compiled a list of about 15 people. This person is one of the people who was obviously at the top of that list. And if you've ever heard the saying that you are a combination of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, I put Carrington in this category for me because Carrington is literally one of the smartest people I know. I feel like having Carrington as a friend makes me smarter automatically. I enjoy conversations with Carrington. I enjoy learning from Carrington, and I'm very inspired by him as well. So it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Man, bro, about to have you tip. Nah, that's awesome, bro. Yeah, we've been going at it for quite some time, bro. Like I remember that day vividly when we first met, and the circumstances in which we met, I knew that this would be an interesting relationship, right? Just the mere fact that we met in a coffee shop where I like to spend a lot of my time, where you like to spend a lot of your time, in thought and just people watching and just, getting into our work and what we're reading and stuff like that. I can truly say like different components of that have like been in our relationship. Us being reflective, us being just self-aware and aware of others around us and attention to detail. All of that stuff was packed into our first interaction, man. So it's always been a pleasure to hear your perspective, watch your perspective, meaning you know how to ask the best questions. You know how to listen excellently, right? And I'm not surprised that you wanted to eventually do a podcast because you're such a good listener. You're such a good a person who can ask good questions. So I was like, this is definitely in Roshan's lane, and he's going to be able to take this, crazy place because he's not only someone who can come up with great questions, but you love learning. Yeah, you love learning. Every time I've seen you, you're always reading a new book. You're always taking on new perspectives. You're always trying to search for knowledge. Right now, you're in a totally, different place than a lot of us are right now, and yeah, man. So it's always been a pleasure to chop it up with you, to talk with you, Damien, Julian, and just to hear you brothers, give your perspective on different issues, different topics. So pleasure to be here, man. Pleasure.
And shout out to Julian and Damien too. Y'all coming up very soon too.
Facts,
Hey,
facts,
but
facts.
but you talk about questions, man, and I wasn't initially gonna start here, but now I am. And the question that you asked me when we first met was, where did I get a haircut? Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And I
do
couldn't
remember
quite understand why you asked me that, because you had dreads at the time. So I'm like, all right,
that.
are you planning to cut your dreads? And what I remember about that conversation was, you asked me, where did I get my hair cut? And 3 hours later, we're leaving. 3 hours late, that one question turned into
That
a
is
3 hour
true.
conversation in a coffee shop.
That is true.
So,
Yeah.
so at that time, when you asked me that, you were working on developing an app.
Yep.
What so this had to be what, 2013, 14?
That's a good question, bro. Yeah.
So think back to ins and outs. So the app was ins outs. So I think it
Yeah.
was
Ins
around
out.
2013, 2014. Um, what made you, so leading up into that point, what made you that be a problem that you wanted to solve? And
For
what was
sure.
the
For sure.
problem that you were trying to solve? Because I guess I know
Yeah.
what ins outs is, but everyone else doesn't.
Yeah. 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 Right now, the solution is pretty ubiquitous, meaning like there's so many competitors in the space who have, raised money, who are doing phenomenally well. Shout out to them. But the original problem that I saw was waiting in a barbershop for just a unknown amount of time, unpredictable amount of time, right? My barber, who's still my barber right now, at the time he was working in a larger shop, and there was always this like back and forth with us in texting, trying to figure out when the appropriate time to get a haircut, right? And then it went from that to me starting around 2013, 2014. I was starting my professional career, and I needed to, focus more on the time I spent on different activities, one being getting my haircut. So as I would, contact my barber, it was always like a hit or miss type of thing. And then when I did come in, I would have to wait. I remember one particular summer where a few folks at my church, they were getting married at the time. So it was like marriage, like every month there was a new person getting married, and it was brutal, right? And I remember thinking like, okay, I have work, I have travel, and I have to make these weddings over the course of spring and summer. And my barber wasn't available, so I ended up going to other barbers. And you know how that is for any black dude, right? Like
Right.
you stick with the barber that you have known because you know what to expect.
Exactly.
And to be honest, I ended up with some really good cuts, right? I met, I had already known the barbers I had went to, but it was kind of like the shame thing too. Whereas you don't go to your barber, you're going to his friend or his colleague. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you should do this because, just out of ethics, you probably should stick with your barber, especially in the same barbershop. But I ended up with good results. But I just thought about how inconvenient it was, and me being a software engineer, me being interested in mobile apps, especially around 2012, 2013, 2014, I saw a problem. I was like, hey, like, I believe I can solve this problem in a way that's unique to me, in a way that's unique to our community, and I can learn something from it. I was really, as I am now, just really focused on startups and creating new businesses off of opportunities and stuff like that is one of the things that I enjoy. So what I ended up doing was building an app and naming it Ins Outs, going to different barbers and figuring out what their problems were, asking them good questions, good interview questions, good customer discovery questions, and just trying to understand like their flow and what's important to them. What I started to realize is that a lot of them have this problem of scheduling and providing the best service to their customers, right? Because sometimes they're getting, a lot of fast money, and they're not really optimizing their interactions with each customer that comes along that way. So I wanted to, kind of dig into that problem more. I felt like it was super relevant, man. I loved it. Like I was able to work with people that I love being around. The barbershop is one of the funnest places to be. And just to imagine like you're waking up every day and you go to the barbershop, not cutting hair, but you're going there to solve problems in the barbershop and hopefully end up with a big payday at the end of it. I thought it was a really great founder product market fit for me. So yeah, for sure.
So where did that problem solving mentality come from? I mean, I mean, I know you mentioned you were a software engineer and you were just starting your career at that point. But to me, and one of the things about being an entrepreneur is usually the most successful entrepreneurs are people who are trying to solve a problem. So for you, what developed that problem solving aspect of your personality or who you are?
Great question, bro. A lot of people may find this to be counterintuitive, but problem solving and creativity are very much closely linked, right? And I would even go as far as to say artists, even in the traditional sense, are great problem solvers, right? They're actually some of the best problem solvers. If you think about an artist, they start with a vision in their mind and they bring that vision to life, right? And in some way along that process, they are expressing themselves through the medium that they're using. They're expressing themselves based on how they're feeling, based on, their ideas, their culture, and so on and so forth. And they translate all of that onto, some paper, some sculpture, so on and so forth. And I think that we don't give artists enough credit in solving problems, right? One could say that a director's job is to solve the problem of telling a story, right? In a very appealing and interesting way. And artists, they find ways to create something out of nothing and make us feel something. You may hate it, you may love it, you may be indifferent towards it, but their job is to make you feel something and provide value in some way. And we kind of overlook it. And the reason why I brought up artists is because, I started, out as an artist. A lot of people don't know that I actually started out creating comic books at a really, really young age, right? So I started really falling into like the whole Marvel and DC. I was a really comic book junkie and Marvel junkie growing up. I nerded out over, Spider-Man and X-Men and X-Men and, so on and so forth. Just the whole Marvel universe. It was really, really big for me. I kind of inherited that from my brother, Emmanuel. He's my older brother and, he's like 10 years older than me. So he would basically get me hip to like all the different comics, who was who was what. So I started buying action figures and I started buying comics and I started playing video games. And in playing video games, I was solving problems. And reading comics, I was looking at how problems were being solved through the characters in those comics. And it just became like clear to me, like this is something that I wanted to do. I wanted to create stories and create comics and stuff like that. I remember at the age of like 8 years old, like I wanted to be Stan Lee. Like I was like, you know what? I want to create my own Marvel so bad, bro. I remember one day, like I was so desperate, like I actually called like my one of my action figures broke. I forget which one it was, but I actually called, it was a company called Toy Biz. So on the back of every, packaging of every toy or action figure, there was a number you could call to get service, right? So I called this number and I'm like, hey, and I'm talking to some lady probably in Idaho or something, right? And I'm like, hey, my toy broke. Like, do you guys know how to fix it? And she was so sweet. She's like, well, we don't know how we can fix it, but what you can probably do is ask your parents if they could send it to us. We can check it out. And she was like working with me and stuff like that. But even at a young age, like I found myself being drawn into this universe. And weirdly enough, man, I used to, I don't know if you remember commercials with action figures in them. Like they would basically set them up a certain way where it looked interesting and it looked cinematic and they would, pan the camera from left to right. And I would do that often just like play out scenes in my head. Wolverine is here, Spider-Man is here, Cyclops is captured by what's his name? Sinister or whatever, right? Like I used to play with all these figures and I used to leave them like just spread out and looking like they're actually in a movie at a really young age. And I think that kind of programmed my mind to be creative and be able to look at a situation and understand like what's cool about this, right? So as I was introduced to programming, that was one of the things that I kind of carried on with me.
Well, I find that fascinating in so many ways. First of all, because I definitely used to do that. The difference with how I played with my toys was I would always take my action figures and make them play football. So literally, I'm having to move each person every single play, every movement. I had to do that with all my action figures. And obviously, it was all random stuff. I never had like
Yeah.
all the whole collection from one thing or another. I had some G.I. Joe, some wrestling man, just
Yep.
a bunch of random stuff. But what I find
Good times.
fascinating mostly is the fact that your experiences of being young and looking at comic books somehow accumulated to you being into software engineering and it developed your artistry. And I find that part fascinating because obviously the show is about experiences and deconstructing the things that help shape us. So
Yep.
we usually never go back that far and think about how certain things in our lives help shape who we are. But I think it's important to do so because then you have a better understanding of, why you're into what you're into. And when you know why you're into what you're into, you can also then relate with more people in terms of what it is that they're into, because I never knew that about you with the action figures. I never even knew that about the comics. And maybe that's why we were able to click so heavy when we had a 3-hour conversation for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. It's funny because going back to the whole wanting to be Stan Lee, right? I created a comic called Skull Crusher, and it was a play on it was an old show in the 80s, probably dating myself, called Ronin Warriors. And Ronin Warriors was this show that basically Japanese anime, but you had these normal, guys they were pretty much like samurai, but they would walk around in plain like gear, and then they would like summon their upgraded armor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to take that and kind of bring like an urban mix to it, an urban reflect or remix, I should say, to it. And I called it Skull Crusher, right? And I wanted to sell it to my friends and my classmates at the time. So I started, drawing and producing it. And I remember going through this process of, how do I make more than one copy of this comic after I drew it? So what I did was, God bless my mom. Like I literally knew that she had just bought a printer, and I was basically making copies from her printer and her scanner of this one comic, right, that I made. And I would try to like staple it all together, and some of it was faded. I didn't realize ink ran out after a certain point in time. And I would show it to my friends and they were interested in it, but I never made any sales, right? I made 3 different issues. And I think that it was the first time I was able to combine like this idea of, let me see if I can sell something, right? Like, let me see if I can take my art and show it to people. And if people like it enough, I can make copies and I can sell it. And people were interested, but at the time I didn't realize like the insecurity that comes along with producing content, producing work, producing art. And I think that held me back from being able to sell. So I put that to the side and I started selling candy instead.
So before I wasn't even going to talk about this, but before we were recording, we were talking about how the insecurities that we may have, or the, lack of confidence that we may have, prevents us from putting our art into the world. Do you think that specific situation at that point helped aid you later on when it came to creating content? Because I definitely want to talk about some of the content you've created over the last 10 years. But how much did that experience of knowing that you didn't want to put it out because you were afraid of, how it would be perceived? So now, did that in any way aid you and give you confidence to do it later on when you started to create content?
Yeah, bro, that's a good question. Thinking of that, I think that it aided me in being able to just work, right? And work in isolation. One of the key questions that tech companies will ask often is, how do you work best? Do you work best like a researcher in a lab, or do you work best on a team collaborating? And I've always found myself working best when I'm alone and I can grasp what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what I'm sensing, right? Versus having so many different signals hitting me constantly in the midst of collaborating with a team. And some tech companies don't look for that. They look for people who work well on teams, because odds are you'll be working on a team and you'll be working on a product that's bigger, much bigger than you, and so on and so forth, right? So I found myself being in this weird place in my career where I work better alone, but I work more efficient with people. But to kind of go back to your question, I think that it made me more aware of my style of working, right? And made me confident and like my ability to work even when I didn't feel like working, and my ability to work when I was stressed out. And my work kind of became my escape to a lot of things. It kind of went from like this fun thing to, okay, now I'm frustrated, so let me work, or I'm sad, let me work, or I'm experiencing some unpleasant emotion, let me work. This is what I know and I can always come back to for some type of like fulfillment. And I think I'm still that way to this day, right? Like I'm better at collaborating now. I work really well on teams, but I really love to kind of sink my teeth into a problem or into something that I'm building, and really have like that pride in the process, that pride in making things unique to me, unique to my perspective and how I see things. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Speaking of that, I want to change the gear a bit. I think you're a Renaissance man. That I consider myself that too, because I feel like, I'm always trying to learn something new. I'm always into different projects, but I usually pick projects that make me a beginner again. And I usually like to use that skill, whatever that might be, to add on to other skills and, put them all together at some point. But I want to talk about one of your skills that a lot of people may not know about, and that being improv comedy.
Oh man.
So you're talking about sinking your teeth into something.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about, you making comics, art, software, tech. How in the world, and what was the thought process that made you say, you know what, I want to get into improv comedy? Walk us through that whole process, please.
Yeah, bro, man. That is an interesting one, because I didn't see it coming. I really didn't see it coming. Shout out to my buddy John Luke. He's a really, really phenomenal person, beautiful person, and we used to work alongside each other as engineers at a startup. Like literally, his desk was right next to mine, and I remember him coming to me one day. We were just talking about creativity and generating new ideas and stuff like that for products. Like how, if you were to make a product that could change the way we consume food, what would it be, right? And just kind of start from this place of first principles. And I remember him saying like he was really interested in the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? And basically he was like really adamant about us like watching the show. He's really adamant about us looking into improv and so on and so forth. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to do improv. And, like it's such a great skill for us, because as engineers, we're spending a lot of our time solving these very procedural, logical, step-by-step problems. And it's not often that you would kind of approach problems in a different way, because best practices are probably already set. Best practices are probably already listed out in tutorials and documentation. So you don't really have a sense of like flexibility and autonomy to solve problems in a very unique way. So, I had, funny enough, I saw a improv business card, like someone who taught improv at the Bun Shop, the place that we met. And I saw that one day just walking past it randomly. So when he had we had this conversation about improv and just thinking off the cuff, I was like, that's something I would really want to do, right? And so we basically, took a whole year and a half. COVID had to happen before we took improv. Like literally, we weren't going to do it until we were all sitting at home, just kind of being bored and finding new activities and new hobbies to pick up. Mm-hmm. So COVID happened, and we were still in, constant communication, talking about startups and stuff like that. And he was like, hey, like, let's just do improv, right? So he looked up Second City, which is a really big improv organization in Chicago. Excuse me, a lot of famous people that we know and love. They all, went there and performed and so on and so forth. So it has a lot of rich historic history to it. But anyway, we took a couple classes at Second City, and we just loved it, man. Like, we couldn't get enough of it. It's one of those things where you have so much adrenaline, fear, anxiety. You're so much in your head. Like it's these moments, like you said, being a Renaissance man, this as well. You have this, when you first do something, you kind of suck at it, but you not only suck at it, you're also in your head about sucking at it. And you don't want to feel that way. You're kind of addicted to this feeling of like, I want to get past this fear. I want to get past this anxiety. There's something here that is a constraint or a roadblock, and I want to get past it. Right. So I'm addicted to this thing that I'm trying to learn so that I can get over this, whatever's happening. And I think improv was one of those things for me. Like, I'm on a camera, right? It was all through Zoom. So I'm on a webcam with like 20 other people, and we're going in a circle, being quote unquote funny, adapting to the situation. And it's my time to go next. And I'm just scared, bro. Like I'm like, just like, bro, like, why did I sign up for this? I don't know what I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna just try to be myself. So you try to be guarded initially. You just like, all right, I'm gonna just be as clean and as filtered and just, straightforward as possible. You try to hold on to your pride, and you don't want to look embarrassed. You don't want to look foolish. And what I realized is that that's not what improv is about, right? Improv is about being in the moment. It's about removing your filter. Obviously, you don't want to offend people. You don't want to be problematic, but you want to kind of toe that line a little bit. You want to go as far as you can go and just be fine with the outcome, not thinking too much about what you're going to say or how you're going to say it. You just go with it. And I think I was just like connected to that spirit a lot. Because, prior to that, I spent a lot of time filtering myself. I spent a lot of time being professional. I spent a lot of time catering to religious aspects or expectations, I should say. Mm-hmm. And I think improv gave me this avenue where I was able to express myself in a real authentic, unadulterated, unfiltered way. So it's a blessing, bro. I love improv.
That's super dope. Do you find yourself now, in situations way more comfortable just because now, you can be flexible in how you respond to things? Is that one of the biggest things you would say you walked away from that with?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a one-on-one person. I'm not really a people's person, but I'm big on one-on-ones, right? I love one-on-ones. So it's helped me, not take life so serious, not take my image so serious, not take myself so serious. And I think that, people always say, they don't give a F, right? Oh, I don't give a F. I don't give a F. People just kind of, they have this defense mechanism where they always want to express how much they don't care about what people think about themselves. Mm-hmm. But, living in a society, we all have images to uphold. We all wear different masks. We walk around with those different masks, and we switch them on and off all the time. And we care about what people think based on the context. And I think improv really kind of showed me how much I did care about what people thought about me, how I look, how I dress, how I talk, all these different things. Even the point of like being from Baltimore, right? Like it's a lot of people that, will joke about your accent being from Baltimore, right? Oh, you guys say to, do, and like they always give you a hard time for it, right? And I used to like mask my accent when I was around people. I would enunciate more, right? I had to learn how to talk, or I had to relearn how to talk at the age of like 20 years old, right? Because when you would speak to me, you would know immediately where I was from. And I think improv is one of those things where uh, ironically, it gets you out of your mind, but it also makes you more aware of when you are in your mind, right? It's like when you're in your mind, you're more aware of the thoughts you're having. You're more aware of any anxiety or fear. And it makes you a more courageous person in real life, I think. So for sure.
So as far as courageous and creativity and not caring what people think, I want to talk about the video that you're also a YouTube content producer. You're also an actor.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it seems like a natural progression as we're walking down this road. It seems like a natural progression. But when I saw the video of you talking into the mic as a DJ host, a radio host, I was blown away. First of all, because I was excited to hear the music. And obviously I had knew you did improv and all that other stuff prior to that. But I instantly thought to myself, would I have the balls to do that? Would I have the balls to do that project? Because it was phenomenal. I thought it was phenomenal, but it made me question the fact that I was like, you know what? What way can I get out of my comfort zone to produce content based on me seeing you do that? And it sounds like, based on the trajectory that you've taken in with the improv and everything else, that was not a problem for you to express yourself creatively. So now, with that being said, it seems like you have no filters whatsoever on what you're willing to produce as an artist, as a creator. And if that's true, how does that feel to be that free in creating art the way you want, for you, how you want to create it?
Bro, man, I mean, it's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey, right? Just a slight detour. I definitely want to say it's important on how, as parents, we expose our children to all different types of activities, right? And knowing you, I know how intentional you are about being a father, how intentional you are about exposing your children to new thoughts and perspectives, sports, ways of thinking, ways of feeling, right? Especially with your daughter. And for me, my mom actually, when we moved out of the city, she put me and my sister into a lot of different, summer programs and after school programs and stuff like that. One of the ones that I joined was tap dancing and theater. So in the 4th grade and 5th grade, I was actually on stage tap dancing and performing. At the time, it was just like something to do, something to get interested in. And if you remember Stomp, it was like a really popular theater performance. That was kind of my inspiration at the time. And I think that my mom exposed me to that, but she also exposed me to the classic, typical sports, baseball, football, basketball. But then she also brought a piano and hired a professional pianist who, was traveling the world and doing amazing things to teach me and my sister how to play the piano. And, I think that, like you said, when we go back into our past and we realize the person that we become is like, there's little seeds and little breadcrumbs along the way. I think that in becoming an adult, we get so used to fitting in. We get so used to people affirming us and validating us. And I think that my 20s was spent going through that process of looking for community, searching for community in a way where I wasn't necessarily looking for validation, but I was looking for people to just accept, and not just accept, but celebrate who I am authentically. And as I started becoming, more of what people were becoming or more of what people expect me to become, I felt less and less authentic to who I was. So I think that in doing startups and in doing business and in being an entrepreneur, you hit these moments of like fear, you hit these moments of like external expectation and what people perceive as success. And you kind of get lost in that process. So I think in me failing as an entrepreneur and succeeding as an entrepreneur, but me failing as an entrepreneur, it taught me to really have more of a focus of what I'm getting out of the experience. And I think that by the time I hit like 30 and 31, bro, like I hit such a low that I didn't really care about, what other people's feelings were, what their opinions were. Like I think that, entrepreneurship has gifted me with this like ability to just be more of a risk taker, which is what I am naturally. Like some people aren't risk takers. I'm naturally a risk taker, but my problem is I don't always know how to calculate the risk. So sometimes I can say the wrong thing. Sometimes I can do the wrong thing at the wrong time. So in making my YouTube content, I just went back to like what I love, right? And I really enjoy a lot of those, old school radio hosts that were comical and kind of caricatures of the in and of themselves, but they were, funny. They were larger than life. They were entertaining, right? You were looking forward to hearing them. And I just thought to myself, like, how cool would it be that I, borrow this gold moment in black history, like this golden era of black history. Why don't I borrow that and mix it with something that we all know and use and love, which is, Airbnb. I had plans with creating content around Uber and other apps like that. So it was an easy decision for me, given my past, given the amount of healing that I had to kind of put effort into doing right over the years. And I just stopped caring, bro. I think COVID kind of opened up a lot of our expectation, or a lot of our understanding of what expectations we have in life. What expectations do you have in your relationships? What expectation do you have in your professional work life? And I think it just kind of made me like even more fearless and less worried about what people say. So I'm becoming more vocal. I'm becoming more, authentic to what it matters to me. And I think it's causing a dividing line for sure. Like people have texted me, I've had some heated discussions and debates with, a handful of people, but I just want to be authentic, like I'm not really concerned with being the most successful entrepreneur. To me, it's being the most impactful.
That's huge, man, because I feel like that's a lost art. I mean, a lot of people do things because they want to be famous, or they want to go viral, or they want to get likes and so forth. And if that's what you do, cool. But I just try to put my energy into being intentional and impactful, period. 100%. And I like to surround myself with people who are like that. And you've been like that from day one. I mean, I remember, like, you're one of the people who I feel I always can come to for support. And not only just support, like, hey, you're doing this right or you're doing this wrong. It's more about you help me think through problems sometimes that I value your perspective, because your perspective is so broad, even based on this conversation we're having. I mean, your perspective is so broad. So I know you're going to help me think through things in a way, and maybe from a perspective that I didn't think about, and sometimes that'll be, and that's super encouraging. So thank you for always being there and being that guy, in my circle. Absolutely, that bro. I can go and talk to and talk through situations with, for sure, because it's inspiring, bro. So if you don't hear that enough, it's super, super inspiring. And it always has been from day one. Even when we talk about, books that we're reading or stuff that you're reading, or, why you're doing improv. And kind of right now, I want to talk about something else that makes you a super interesting guy, man. And I don't know if most people know this either, but you're learning Mandarin. Mandarin is one of the hardest languages in the world to learn. And you master one skill, you gain some leverage on one thing, and then you make yourself a student again by going to learn Mandarin. So walk me through the process of why you chose to go learn Mandarin, what you've learned so far, and how that is helped shaping you into your most authentic self.
Yeah, bro. Mandarin. Well, first and foremost, I love Asian culture. right now you're in Japan, and that's one of the places I've yet to visit, and I have to go. Right.
Well, you
I
have
love
to
Asian.
come, especially because I'm here now. So, whenever Japan is
100%.
open, to come pull up on me.
1000% for sure, bro. I'm there. But yeah, I love Asian culture. I know it's not all monolithic. And like a lot of people, I caught the K-pop bug probably in the early 2010s, right? I was like, K-pop is so cool. They dance, they dress, amazing. And it's very expressive, based on how they dress. It's just a very unique art form, right? Very unique art genre, music genre. And in falling in love with K-pop, also started to get really interested in Korean in general, just the language, right? And I remember, kind of playing with it a little bit, learning a few words here and there, and it being like my number one destination. If I were to ever travel to Asia, this is one country that I have to visit, right? Fast forward to 2019, and I was going to travel. I was traveling at the time, and I wanted to go to Korea, but it was like super expensive. Like the ticket, the Airbnb, like lodging, everything was just super expensive at the time. So I chose the next best thing that I thought, which was Vietnam. And I went to Vietnam for originally planned to go for 2 weeks, but I ended up staying a whole month. And I just really loved it, bro. Like I love the feeling of blending in, standing out, but also blending in at the same time, right? It's a unique feeling as a Black man to go to any Asian country I could imagine, but in Vietnam in particular, you go there, you don't know what to expect. You're like, is there going to be danger? Is there going to be racism? Is it going to be, just this awkward moment of people staring, people pointing, people touching your hair? So you have all these thoughts going in preconceptions. And then you go and you find new friends. You have people who are literally appreciative of who you are as a Black man and your culture and stuff like that. And they start teaching you, Vietnamese words on how to say thank you, how to say goodbye. And I remember that experience being so like heavenly, bros. It was amazing. And when I came back to the States, I just said, you know what? I'm going to do my due diligence and really, learn the history behind a lot of different Asian countries, learn different languages, and really push myself as opposed to just playing with, Duolingo and trying to learn a few words here and there. So when COVID happened, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. Like I kept consuming a lot of podcasts that were focused on China and their technological innovation, right? How fast they're moving, light years ahead of the US, and how everything is like seamless, and they have so much funding, and they're just building. And they have, they call it, what is it called? 996, which is this idea of them working 9 hours a day. I don't want to butcher it. It's 9 hours a day. Sorry, it's from nine. It's from 9 to 9, right? 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it just shows the velocity and the intensity that Chinese entrepreneurs, Chinese technologists work each and every day, and just that culture in general. They're like workhorses. So me being interested in the technological innovation and everything that's happening in China, Mandarin just kept coming up. And as you already stated, is one of the world's hardest languages. I remember back in college, everyone told me to avoid Mandarin. It was like, hey, take Spanish, take French, take an easy language, get your language credit and get out. And everyone was fearful of Mandarin. And everyone that I knew at the time that was taking Mandarin was just like super stressed. And I remember having fear towards Mandarin. I was like, you know what, I'm avoiding that. I'm not going to take it. So then you fast forward to today, I was just thinking like, you know what, what's going to challenge me, what's going to be useful, and what's going to give me a new perspective in some other part of the world, right? And I thought about Korean, I thought about Japanese, but Mandarin just kept sticking out. So I was like, you know what, I'm just pick it up and I'm gonna just find, some place where I can learn it. So I actually signed up for an online service, got me two Mandarin teachers, two tutors, and we meet, bi-weekly. I have assignments. It's hard. It's challenging, especially when you don't practice it every day. Like it's one of those languages where you have to keep practicing because the different tonalities, the different tones can mean something totally different depending on how you say things. Or if you had the same word, it can mean something totally different based on how you say it, right? So it's definitely one of those things where I'm in love with the language because it's again showing me something about myself, showing me a new perspective, a new culture. And you actually see the psychology of how the language evolved, right? It evolved from basically like hieroglyphs, like it evolved from this pictures, and they kind of slowly transformed to Chinese script, Chinese characters as we see them and know them today. So you see the beauty of that, the psychology of the people and how they thought about forming a language. And you just don't get that, very much learning English. You just learn English and that's kind of it,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I see that firsthand by living in Japan. Like I'll say words that I've been practicing to people and they still, and obviously, and then sometimes they don't know the hell I'm talking about, but it's just based on the tonality of how I say it or whatever. But I still try because I do think it's important for me, living in Japan, it's important because, man, I like to connect with people. I like to talk to people. I like to get to know them. And I'm curious about things about the culture. And sometimes for me to learn things about the culture, I got to ask. And then they're also curious about my culture. So I want to be able to have that dialogue that will allow us to connect and share things about the culture, so even having this conversation has inspired me even more to take it a little bit more serious. But I'm gonna put you on the spot, man. You got to say something in Mandarin for us, and then you got to tell you got to say something in Mandarin for us. You got to do that, and then you could tell your two teachers will make them proud right now if I give us a phrase.
Okay. Let's see. Jiao Carrington Shi Sun Shi E. Okay.
So I think you said my name is Carrington, maybe.
Yeah, my name is Carrington, and I am 32 years old. No, I'm 32. I just said I'm 32. Hold on. Shi Sun Shi E Suela. Years old. There we go.
Well, look, I mean, I can't confirm or deny whether it's right or not, but I'm pretty sure.
They'll know.
but
yeah, my tonality needs some work, but I'm getting there.
Yeah. So speaking of, we talked about China and, you've never been to China, right?
I've never been.
Okay. But you have been to Africa. And that is an experience that I definitely want to talk about because there are not a lot of people who I personally know who've been and, that I know closely, like I know you. And what was that experience like, bro? I mean, I remember when you said you were going to go and you were traveling with a group of people, but share, how you came to, and, and I know you've been a lot of places, just in terms of traveling, but share with us how you came to the decision to go to Africa and what you walked away from that experience with.
Yeah, bro. So the idea was originally my sister's friends. They were trying to get everybody together for a trip, and they decided on going to South Africa in 2019 for New Year's. So some people went at the end of 2018 in December, and some people went to Ghana, and they were all kind of transitioning to South Africa by the first. And my sister just, threw it out there like, hey, like, you want to go to South Africa? Like, got this trip planned. At the time, I was still building ins outs. So my money was pretty tight. So I was, trying to figure out if I would even be able to afford it. And that was that was in 2018. That was the same year that I shut it down over the summer and, started working at another startup. And so I actually got the funds and I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna go. I think this will be a good reset. This will be a good break. It'll be good for my spirit, right? So I decided to go based on that. My sister and her friends, shout out to them. They're like party animals. So we did the whole club thing. We did the whole, going to different safaris and museums and doing different activities and stuff like that. Like every day we were doing multiple things. So I didn't know what to expect going into it. I thought that I knew it would be a unique experience. And it's funny because my buddy JL, he bought me Trevor Noah's book, autobiography, and it's called Something is a Crime. Oh, I forget the title. It's escaping me right now.
I know what you're talking. I think is it Black is a Crime or something? It's Something is a Crime. I know what you're talking about.
Something is a Crime. Yeah. So he bought me that audiobook. It was a perfect present. I listened to it on a 22-hour flight on the way there. I think it was 22 hours. So I listened to it, and Trevor Noah, he talked about how he grew up and his childhood experience and his close relationship with his mom. And how South Africa kind of changed over time. So I had some context and some history just by listening to his audiobook headed there. And when I got there, bro, I was just blown away by how welcoming the people were, right? The Africans were. They were almost to a point where you felt like they were family, right? Like they were relatives, and they were excited to see us. They were super pleasant. They, told us what to look out for. They told us about more history about, the apartheid and how things were. So it was one of those feelings where we were there for 13 days, but over the course of days, you felt more and more at home. But there was this very like almost like a dark cloud hanging over South Africa in my experience, which was this, huge gap in wealth, right? Huge gap in resources and ownership, right? And what was very apparent is that every place that we went to, whether it was a winery, some restaurant, it was all owned by Europeans, right? The Dutch or descendants, right? And it was just this really imbalance of equity, this really imbalance of ownership. And I think that kind of, it didn't taint the experience for me, but it made everything so much more real as to how things are in America. Like it was this very close semblance to how we see things in America. And I think that was a very unfortunate thing, but it opened my eyes up to how I can view myself as an agent of change, right? Whether it be in America, in South Africa, in Asia. And going back to learning Mandarin, another reason why I wanted to learn Mandarin was so that I can represent Black people, and particularly Black men in the eyes of Chinese people. Now, granted, that's not my responsibility, and it shouldn't be my responsibility. It shouldn't be anyone's responsibility. But as a Black man, you always want to be conscious of how the world perceives you when you're traveling, right? It's unfortunate, and it sucks that we have to walk on eggshells, and that we can't express the full ranges of emotion or full ranges of expression when we want to, voice our disdain, when we want to voice our displeasure, when we want to voice problems that we have, because it could be seen or linked back to a stereotype. So South Africa was a dope trip, man. We had a lot of fun. We partied a lot, and we came back everyone came back different. I think I came back a different me. I came back wanting to travel more. I came back wanting to understand history and not taking history for granted. I think that we all take history for granted. And I think there's a lot of clarity. It's a lot of knowledge and clarity that can be gained from researching and understanding history and why things are the way they are. I find myself being frustrated a lot with society in general in America, the Western society, but different societies. But in order for me to alleviate some of that frustration, I think studying, helps in looking at, how far we've come and how better things have gotten.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, it's no different than what we said about going back, studying your own history of who you were and how you were and what your experiences were as a kid. It's just on a broader scale. I mean, it's on a broader scale. It's important for you to know the history of places that you are, because it helps you understand maybe where some of these ideologies and thought processes come from.
For sure.
So I think it's a similar process, and I agree that history is important, but what makes it important is going back and you digging in and you determining what you want to know, and not just allowing someone to tell you this is history and then you just take that from face value. Like,
yes,
you actually going yourself to experiences and get the feeling of yourself of what it is that what resonates with you when you're there. How do you feel? How do you feel from traveling to Vietnam? How do you feel from learning Mandarin? How do you feel because automatically just that's the surface thing. But when you start going to the depths of it, all the things that you walk away from the experience with.
Yes, absolutely, bro. Absolutely. And I think that is one of those gifts that I think improv has taught me, right? Like, being in that moment and not being too much in your head, right? Because I think while I was in South Africa, I was definitely in my head about what was going on and things around me. And also in Vietnam. But what I'm learning now is when you're more present, you can connect with how you're feeling. You can connect with what you're thinking, how other people around you are feeling. And I think that makes for a better experience regardless of where you travel. So I think we want to go back basically next year. And I think in going back next year, I'm going to come with a whole totally different perspective. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about traveling more and, actually putting myself out there to feel these feelings and not kind of suppress it by, just going, partying, right? And just really be in the moment. So it'll be beneficial for sure.
Yeah. Well, you gotta let me know those dates, man, because I mean, it's been on my list of places to go, and that's a place that I haven't been that I want to go. So it'll be better to go with some people that I know.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah. For sure.
So we coming down the home stretch here, and before I ask these last couple questions, man, I just want to say I really enjoy talking to you. Every single time we talk, I mean, I'm talking about from 2013 to now. It's just always, even if we, just catching up, even if we talking about some series, even if we talking about music or movies, or you telling me a book that inspired you or a show or whatever, it's always, I always walk away better. So again, thank you for just being you, bro. Just for being you. Just thank you.
Absolutely. Speaking to that, bro, it's funny how you're the best recommender ever, right? Recently you recommended Genius, the Yeezy documentary. But before that, Westworld. What else? I feel like there's so many different books, and everything you recommend has been worth my time. It's certain things where we can be listening to a podcast and people recommend whatever, right? And it's not really relevant. You feel like it may be the wrong timing, but everything that you recommend has successfully been not only the right thing and relevant, but also worth my time. Like I leave being a different person after something you recommend. And I don't know if you do that intentional, if it's natural, if you're like, you know what, I think he'll find value in this, or it's just happened to be coincidence. But I can definitely say, like, you have an ear, you have an eye, you have a good sense for what me personally, but people are in need of regarding, something that can pick them up, right? Because watching the documentary, when you literally told me, bro, you was like, look, I know you got a long list. I know you got a long list of things to consume, but look, you need to put this at the very top of your list. And I was like, you know what? I knew how serious you were. And I'm like, okay, man, I'm gonna save a good Saturday night, a good Sunday night for part 1, part 2, and part 3. I'm gonna just dedicate this time, and I'm gonna take his advice. So I definitely want to say, bro, you be on point with all that, bro.
So to answer your question, man, it is intentional, and it comes from being present with whoever it is that I'm talking to or recommending something from. I know you.
Gotcha.
We've talked, like, we spent time together. We've done a magnitude of things and talked about a magnitude of other things. And I try to do that with everybody. I mean, even if I feel like if I'm present, as you mentioned with the, as what you learn from improv, as if I'm present in a situation and I'm listening and I'm engaged, I can easily recommend things because it might have been something that we talked about. It might have been something that you shared. So instantly, if I'm seeing something or consuming something, and I think that you can find benefit from it, I'll share it. And I do that with everybody, bro. So no one's actually ever gave me that compliment before. So, but you're the first. But I try to do that with people. I even try to give gifts like that too. I pride myself on being a good recommender and a good gift giver. And I think it's because, I always like to pay attention to what it is that people may need. Not that I'm assessing and determining it, but it's because I'm listening and engaged in the conversation or present in the moment. And usually whatever that is communicated. So if it hits me and I say, hey, this made me think of Carrington, boom, I'm gonna share. If this makes me think of, whatever else, then I'll share that as well. And sometimes people even come to me and ask me for places because they know that, I'm probably going to give them the best advice that I can give or recommendation that I can give. So I do pride myself on that.
It's excellent, bro. Like it's really excellent. And I can tell it's coming from a genuine place of assessing someone's needs versus projecting, what you think someone should do, or projecting what is not a selfish place at all. And I think that's really hard, because you have to put your pride aside and really, cater to the person, right? And get them what they need versus what you think is best, just so you can say, well, I told you, I told you so, or I'm right. Right. So it's a very useful skill, bro. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, boss man.
For sure, bro. Sure, man.
So last couple questions, boss. I think that one of the things that I find to be interesting is always finding out a era in history or a time in history where someone, wishes they could have experienced. So what's that time in history for you?
Great question. Wow. Time in history. Man. For some reason, I think I would. It's kind of a weird one for me, but I would really love. I would really have loved to see Rome at its highest, but also the fall of Rome, right? Whether it's with Attila the Hun, whether it's with the infighting, and it's not necessarily centered around Rome, but just understanding that time in history and how they conquered a lot of the world, right? How they subjugated a lot of nations. Like I would just like to see that military might, the diplomacy, the resources that were captured, and just understanding like how that civilization existed compared to other civilizations, and seeing that kind of play out. So maybe a little bit before that time and a little bit after that time, I think will be a really interesting time to live and witness. But it's so many though. It's so many. Like I was also thinking about when when Einstein was alive, and him coming to understand how he learns and how he taught in World War II, and the race for nuclear weapons and stuff like that, or harnessing nuclear energy. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been an interesting time just to see people, see scientists, engineers all across the world, seeing nations war with each other. I'm sure it was pretty scary and frightening at the time. But any time in history where things change irreversibly, things will never be the same after this. And I'm sure we're probably living in that time now, bro. Literally, like things will probably never be the same after this. Like with Russia and Ukraine and COVID and all these other things that are happening at lightning speed constantly. Like I don't think, America will be the same ever again. So yeah.
Yeah. Well,
great question.
That really puts stuff in perspective, because you're right. This will be one of those times that irreversible, that we will never, it was like a change in gear, and we've lived through it. We've read about the other ones, we've heard about the other ones, but this is one that will definitely be a bookmark chapter in human history.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how it feels living through it because it's one of those things where we all have to die one day, but I definitely want to see how the books will be written and how people interpret this time, because everything's documented, right? Like this conversation is documented. Anything anyone says, whether it's a musician, politician, everything's documented. We have video format, we have audio format, we have writing. Like this is the most documented time in history. So it's like nothing goes under the radar. So you'll have people in future generations that have exposure to everything, our thoughts, our feelings, our mistakes. Like you think about it, religion, sexuality, politics, like all this stuff will be just accessible, maybe downloaded to their brain or something. I don't know. I don't even know if they'll even have computers in the future, right?
Right. But, I mean, it's interesting to think about. And I think that's I'm going to write that down as one of the topics that I want to talk about with you on the next podcast that we have together, because we're going to have many, because, however long we've been recording, it's never enough time. It's never enough time to talk about all the things that we really want to talk about. Another question that I do have for you, though, is what's one thing that you think everyone should experience? If you can recommend one thing for everybody to experience that bears the most fruit, what would that be?
Wow. Heartbreak.
Interesting. Heartbreak. Break that down.
Say heartbreak. Woo. We're gonna need another hour, bro. Man, heartbreak in so many ways, right? I think heartbreak has taught me, let's just say that heartbreak can happen in a variety of different ways. And it's all in relationship, right? It's how you relate to something or someone. And I think that heartbreak has taught me not only how precious life is, but how precious your mind state and sanity and emotionality is in life, right? Mm-hmm. Like, everyone says health is wealth, right? But your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, all these things can be impacted greatly. They can be devastated by heartbreak. And that heartbreak can be your golden retriever dying at the age of 7, right? That heartbreak can be obviously someone that you love whether romantically or platonically, that person transitioning or severing the relationship. And I think heartbreak really has taught me that I thought that was a low, but certain heartbreaks can bring you down to your lowest, and you're just so much more grateful for the things that matter, right? The people that matter, the thoughts that matter. And I think that heartbreaks really puts you in perspective that, hey, like we all have 100 years on this earth, and spending it frivolously or spending it unintentionally can lead to a lot of heartbreak that is unnecessary, right? So while I will say everyone should experience heartbreak, I don't think everyone should be overwhelmed or succumbing to that heartbreak, right? It should be, okay, I learned, let me try to, do the best that I can do to, not put myself intentionally in this position. But that doesn't mean you live with fear or you live like checking every corner and you're just like always protected and defensive. It means that you realize that every person is special. Every moment is special. This moment is special. It won't exist again, and it teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot for sure.
Well, I'm gonna reflect on that because I haven't thought about it in that way, but it makes absolute sense. I've thought about it from the perspective of, pain, which pain is essentially heartbreak. I've thought about
sure.
pain, and I feel like pain is something that when we experience it, it teaches us things about it takes us to a place that we wouldn't go on our own.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
100%.
go there on your own,
Yeah.
And I'll give a light example, which is just like a sporting event, right? You might go lose, let's just say the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it might hurt, it might hurt, it might be painful, but the reflection so now you got two locker rooms at the end. There's one team reflecting and there's another team reflecting, but the reflecting that's taking place is nowhere near the same.
Wow, that's big. That's big. Yeah, that's crazy.
But anyway, man, let's wrap it up because if we keep talking, we're going to keep talking and it's going to be a 10-hour interview. But I do want to thank you so much, bro.
Sure, bro.
This is why I was very excited about having you on the show, man, because I knew that it would just be a lot of value exchange, a lot of value provided. And I'm looking forward to everything that you are working on. Speaking of what you're working on, man, share all of your info, all of the ways that people can connect with you, and how to find you.
Absolutely, bro. So on YouTube, you can check my channel out. It's called Carrington. Maybe a little hard to find because I just started last year, but you can reach me on Twitter at Carden. That is CARDENN. You can definitely shoot me a DM on there, or you can look for me on Instagram at Carrington Dennis. Not too many people named Carrington Dennis, so I should be, the top result. And you can DM me on there, reach out. I do consultancy, software consultancy. So if you're building an app, a website, if you want to, perfect your MVP, your minimal viable product, get your product out to market. I specialize in that as well. So yeah, hit me up. I'm always open. DM's always open. Love collaborating.
No doubt. All right, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
Bro, it's been such an honor, man. I'm so happy you reached out to me. So happy you're doing this, man. I have so much, I don't even want to say expectation, but I have so much anticipation for you and what you're doing. And I always have, it's funny. I'll make this short. As far as your brand, right? And you working on merch and you doing anything you've ever done, bro. Like I'm always excited to see you move forward with your photography. The stuff that I've learned from you being a father has definitely changed my perspective on child rearing and how to raise children today, right? How to be an active participant in the lives of your children constantly, right? And challenging them, right, in a very constructive way. So I just want to thank you for being that father, being that friend, being that creative, being that artist, being that professional. Always open for a conversation. You know, when I'm losing my mind, I can always depend on you, bro. So I just want to thank you, bro. And bro, you're gonna do amazing things, dog. You're gonna do amazing things for real, for sure, bro.
No doubt, man.